Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1 of Undone. Obviously, got to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. For one, I'm labeling it as a Super-Fanta-Fi. Does this technically count as Super-Fanta-Fi? I thought so, but then I don't want to spoil things, especially if you haven't seen the show yet. Like, obviously, I will get to that soon enough, but it's like, I don't know. Like I said, that's regardless. So part of me is thinking I need to eventually come up with another fourth category to fit stuff that doesn't fit in either the three categories of review TV show things I do. Regardless, that's like I said, that's a lot of housekeeping stuff. But let's focus on Undone. What did I think about the season? For one, I was actually surprised because I was actually halfway expecting the episodes to be hour long, 40-ish minutes, without commercials and stuff like that. Well, even longer because sometimes stuff like this without commercials tend to be on the longer side of the full hour block. But regardless, I was actually surprised how short the episodes are. They're literally 20-ish minute long episodes. I'm like, holy crap. But it's so interesting. I wasn't expecting the show to be what it is. Like I said, in general, I thought it was great, actually. It's just the concept behind it, because I went into it, obviously, and this is just me talking about something that's already in the trailer. Basically, after an accident, the main protagonist, her name is Alma, ends up finding out hey, I can time travel and all of that. And she's talking to her dead father, who's like, yeah, go back in time and save me. And it's about that. And it's this weird, trippy, very show. And it's so nice because it's a blend of so much. There's some real grounded drama in the fact there's a lot of family issues. There's a grounded level to this, but there's also a humorous side to it, and then you get the weird kind of psychedelic and time travel aspect to it. So it's a little bit of everything, and the show has so many nice advances when it comes to the relationships between Alma and her sister Becca and her mom. And then just what this also meant for her relationship with her dad father. There's a lot there. Even her relationship with Sam took some turns. I'm like, whoa. Okay, but the plot takes some interesting turns. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It is a very interesting ride. Like I said, you will kind of be it'll kind of break your hearts in certain regards because you'll kind of feel for the characters. But in a moment, you'll laugh because you're like, holy shit, that's funny. So it's like I said, it's a little bit of everything. So if you've not seen the show, I highly recommend you check it out. For one, it has a great, I don't know what you consider that animation style. I know there's probably a name of it. And even when the trailer came out, I was I feel like I've seen an animation style similar to that. I forgot the one I made a reference to, but even that, even whatever it was I referenced, I don't think was a apt reference to use for this. It's just a very neat animation style because even all the characters literally look like the actors who play them. For example, Alma is literally just Rosa Salazar. So I don't know how this animation is done. Is it kind of a CG animation or whatever the case may be? Hence why they were able to kind of do what they. I don't know, but it's got a very kind of I don't know, oily feel. I don't know how to properly describe the animation, but it's very unique and very distinct, and I think it lends itself well to this, especially when you do the whole mind bendy shit and it kind of the almost Inception level stuff to it. So regardless, like I said, this is just me throwing out trying to be not as spoilers, but going forward, I will be going into spoilers. But like I said, if you've not seen this, I highly recommend you check it out. I think it's well worth your time. It's like I said, it's literally short. It's only 8 episodes. Each is barely 25 minutes. So it's something to kind of just quickly run through. But I think it is something you're always going to be where they're going to go next? Where they're going to go next? Where does this take us? So, yeah. So, like I said, going forward, I will be going into spoilers. So do keep that in mind. So you have warned. Okay, so there's quite a few things to kind of break down about this. What like I said, I love about this is because it's not something, this whole time travel thing isn't something we jump to immediately. Because I thought maybe the car accident happens pretty early. Like I said, I was also under the impression this is going to be an hour-long drama, so I figured okay, we get some of that, and then the accident happens, and then she'll figure it out. I thought it'll all be part of the first episode. It's no, things kind of happen pretty quickly, yet slowly at the same time, in the sense that for Alma, there's the whole situation of she's in a process of like, like I talked about before, I like the aspect of for her it's like life is boring because it's this and that. It's the same thing day in and day out. She comes from like the complicated family issues that she has, even her own personal issues, like the whole like, because I kept warning, I was like, is that a hearing aid? But they never made note of it too much, but you'd see her putting on, I was like, is that a hearing aid or am I being stupid? And it's like, oh no, it turned out to be a hearing aid. And to kind of dive into that, obviously a very complicated relationship she has with Becca, because Becca's basically in her own right, Becca's going through a lot of stuff through the course of this as well. Just, I mean, legitimately, her family is in their own right too. I think all of them are just trying to find a way to navigate through life after just everything that's happened, everything they're kind of dealing with on a personal level, and just like the relationships with other characters because of the stuff that they're dealing with. It's such a fascinating story, just all in its own. Like, even if you took like the time travel aspect out of this, you could make it be like that's kind of its, what would be the word, it's gimmick, I guess, and you just take the story as it is. It can easily be a compelling drama all on its own. So I should also point out, like, obviously there's some familiar faces, like one, Constance Marie, Angie from the George Lopez show. I was like, oh, look at shit. I think I remembered her being in this, but I was like, oh my god, it's Constance Marie. That's so dope. Also, like, Tyler Posey's in this as Father Miguel. I was like, aren't you too young to be I guess I shouldn't, I don't know how the whole, church thing works. I just don't, like, but then again, it might be a thing where, like, certain, they might have, like, his character might be technically older than what he actually is, just because maybe they can fiddle with it because it's animation, whatever the case may be, regardless. Oh yeah, and obviously got freaking Bob Odenkirk, one Saul Goodman from obviously Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, which I need to circle back around to Better Call Saul. Like, I only got like partway through season 1, and I really like what I saw. I just haven't circled back to it. I need to I'll probably do that, like, regardless. I'm going into the whole thing. Like, I'm not going to go down that route. Regardless, obviously there's a whole big thing too of like Rosa Salazar. She's from obviously most recently Alita Battle Angel. What was that? Obviously I saw also on our IMDb she was in the second and third Maze Runner movies, which I should circle around to those because I've only seen the first Maze Runner movie, and I liked it. I just never saw 2 and 3. I need to circle back around to that. Also, I remember I forgot what it was. It was a random clip I saw. Her, like, I think it's like one of her favorite TV shows is Preacher, where I'm like, all right, I'm totally in love with Rosa. That just immediately, she seems already like a dope person. That just put her at the top. I'm like, that's dope. I don't know why. Just like knowing it's like, I love that show too. So it's like, it just made me geek out when I found out that she's a big fan of the show too. Which also at some point I need to watch Alita Battle Angel. I've never read the original manga that it's based on, but still I just haven't circled around it. Regardless, I'm going a whole bunch of tangents and stuff like that. I get like that when it comes to like actors and stuff like that. But nevertheless. But like I said, I like this whole situation of like this grounded story of just kind of like, okay, like for one, we find out like, oh yeah, like her grandmother, their grandmother on their dad's side, their dad's mom she was schizophrenic. That like, because it's interesting because even Alma's like, wait, I'm learning more about my dad's stuff that she figured she already knew about him. Like, for example, the fact is he smoked. She's like, I didn't know that. Just to feel like, wait, I thought I knew all there was to know about her dad, and now I'm just learning something, even though it's something that's insignificant. When it's someone that's been missing from your life for so long, and then you just find out, it's like, wait, how am I just finding it out? It probably feels like there's pieces of your heart kind of being missing along the way. And then I thought I'm skipping all over the place, but I thought that was kind of the beauty of it, because for her, it's like we are broken, and it's like we shouldn't be, because Alma was like, her and Becca shouldn't be with people because we're broken people and we break people, because it's like she's telling Becca she shouldn't be with Reed, because you can even tell, like, it's like you don't really even love him like that. Obviously there's the whole thing about like her and the bartender, Tomas, and I love that, like, it started off with a little kissing, and then I was like, oh, how long are you going to keep this up? Because Alma's pretending to be the one that was engaged, but then it's like, oh, they kiss a little bit and then they kiss more, and then Alma just walks away. I'm like, you're just going to walk away from that situation that you kind of set up because of the whole dare thing? But I guess, like, for her, it's just kind of like this is just proof that my sister isn't really in love with Reed. She's obviously a little pissed about the whole situation when she shows up at church earlier the next day. I'm sure that just makes her feel more humiliated. But there's this whole thing of like, okay, but it's the whole back and forth of being like, you don't even know how much stuff is messed up with you. And Alma's like, yeah, I do know how much is messed up with me, and that's the whole point in all this. She gets in a crash and everything, which it turns out like her dad was like, Jacob was like, oh yeah, like I made you crash. She's like, wait, what? Yeah, so I could get you here so you could wake up, so that you can kind of unlock your full potential. Because I like how like the thing I compare this to, because it's got this like fantasy element of like an Inception to it. It kind of reminds me of borderline it's Inception and Legion. In many different regards, definitely the Legion front, because like at the end of because it was something I was like, oh, she really is time traveling, but then other aspects were making me like, maybe she's not. Literally, I'm going to jump to the damn ending. No, I won't. I won't. It's that thing like that Legion does of like, just because you have powers that, you know, hey, your powers made you think the entire time that you were crazy, it doesn't mean the fact is that you're just not a crazy person with powers. And I now that I'm sitting here saying that, I shouldn't say that, because, you know, I don't want anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying is in the sense of like someone with schizophrenia is crazy, because obviously that's not like, you know, very insensitive. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying in someone's mind, you know, I'm speaking more so from the perspective of Legion, because that's literally verbatim conversations that pop up early in the show that literally play out as the show plays out. If you've ever seen Legion, you'll get what I'm trying to say. But regardless, there's just so much to it. Like I said, like, you know, there is, you know, all this serious stuff with like the whole, like I said, like him helping her time travel to the point he's kind of putting her in time loops, even her catching up with herself in the time loops, because she's in the elevator pressing button. She's like, press the button. It's like, I already tried. She's like, you don't get it. We're stuck in a time loop. And then later on, she becomes that Alma that was pushing the buttons, explaining to the other Alma, we're stuck in a time loop. I'm like, I love that. Like I said, this show is so trippy. And because it's animated, I think you do get a little bit of that more freedom to kind of play with that trippiness, kind of get a little, I don't know necessarily the word would be cosmic, but maybe that is probably the word. Just like how things kind of go to the stars and everything, how like I think the animation style lends itself very nicely to the whole trippy aspect of her time traveling and stuff like that. But like, I even love that moment of like her being embedded and like her watching her mom like age, turn to bones and die, and then come back, and she's being reborn. Like literally her life from beginning to end is kind of circling right there, and it's turning like the sun and moon are swishing by the window and everything, and just like I said, she's getting stuck in these loops. She kind of gets sent back because her dad is pushing her because he needs her help, because I knew he died in a car accident and whatnot. I thought that was the whole point of just to save him, but it turns out, oh, actually I was murdered. I need you to help figure it out. I'm like, whoa, there's a murder what? There's kind of like a mystery element to this, trying to figure out who murdered your dad. Okay, that, like, I already thought was kind of an interesting concept to go back in time to save your dad, but now it's like, oh, you're not just saving from a car accident, just like some dumb luck thing. It's like, no, it was pure straight up murder. So that in itself just adds this extra element to the whole thing too. Like, it adds this kind of severity to like, okay, why you want to, oh, I mean, for one, it's like, her dad, you know, because she feels abandoned by her dad, because obviously, like, we can see like how much of a strain this all kind of put on her. It broke her. We see at one point, like, we never elaborated on it too much, but at one point in time she cut her own wrist because everything was too much. And it's so sad too, because like Becca and her had that falling out, because for Becca it's like, all you do is take the shine away. Like, I'm always in your shadow. Like, you're always the most important one. Like, you know, when you almost died like that, even like your hearing aid and stuff like that. And she's like, wait, you think I wanted this? And it's just like, for once, I was thinking this 1 year would be about me and not you, but you ruined it. And she's like, I was in a fucking coma, which is like, but it's that thing of just kind of like, I think as the younger sister, she always feels like she's always in her older sister's shadows. I think it's that, you know, so there's that innate human aspect of just being selfish in the sense of like, okay, you know, you're always going to want attention because you feel like for her, she just never felt like anything she did was good enough to get anyone else's attention, because Alma, whether it was something good or whether it was something bad, would always get more of the attention, you know? So I just thought that was kind of an interesting aspect. I thought it was kind of interesting too that what they ended up doing with Sam, because we know that she broke up with Sam, but it seemed, and I also like too, because at first, and I love how they cut this in, like she jumped 2 weeks into the future back home with Sam, and he's like, oh, like, you're okay, like, about this secret, or it's like a secret being kept. I was like, what the hell is that about? But then she snapped back to present day. I was like, that's so interesting. And literally we get that scene fully played out later, and I thought that was kind of neat how they did that. So, you know, keeping with the continuity of everything, kind of keeping up with the timeline and everything. I thought that was kind of interesting. But what they did with Sam, I thought was kind of interesting, where it's kind of like, okay, something's up here, because Becca knows, literally everyone knows. At first I thought it was a situation of like, okay, I was like, right, they broke up. I was like, the thing is going to be the fact is that they, because she starts noticing things not being right. She's like, what about these pictures? They look like they're moved. And then the couch, she was slowly figuring it out, being like, yeah, something's up here and I'm just not sure what it is. And he kept being dodgy about it. He wasn't trying to answer the questions. So I was like, what the hell is up with that? I'm not understanding what that whole situation was supposed to be. But then it, you know, slowly came. I was like, oh, right. Because she did break up with him. And then, because like the thing, it did seem like she didn't remember it. But all that kind of made me go, all right, so that's what that all means. Because I initially thought like, okay, so he, you know, the whole, I thought was a lie that everyone was okay with, that everyone was like, yeah, she thinks things are like this, so we don't scare her too much. We're going to, because that literally all happened like within a span of like 24 hours, like the night before all that happened. Well, no, like it was, I guess because it was like relatively fresh stuff in her brain. So probably like the past couple hours or day or two or whatever kind of got wiped from her memory because of, the head trauma and whatnot. So it ends up being this very interesting thing that I thought was like, oh, like everyone had decided we'll keep the lie just to, you know, make everything seem normal to her. But it's like, you can also make the argument, not make the argument, definitely say that Sam also did it for selfish reasons, because it's like, hey, I thought, you know, I was worried about you. I thought you were going to die. The fact of the matter is that, you know, I thought, you know, for him, it's like, I even love the whole aspect that she's like, you even had sex with me. He's like, of course I had sex with you. I mean, if we didn't have sex, it would be, you know, something was up. It's like, I love Sam's back-assward, like, you know, thought process to think that that was okay. But regardless, you can understand for him, it's like, oh, I love you, and I got another chance, because you just wanted everything to be okay, so I didn't want to mess up everything. It's like, for one, it kind of goes in line with, it's kind of a weird situation of he got what he wanted, but at the same time, you can tell it was out of concern, but at the same time, you can also say it's like, oh, it's also because you love the person. So it all kind of goes hand in hand, but it's a combination of concern and being selfish that he didn't tell her the truth about everything, that literally no one did. I also love the fact is that Sam found her talking to the bartender, and it's like, hey, she's like, whoa, what? He's like, what did you do? Fuck the bartender? He's like, wait, whoa, did you fuck the bartender? It's like, he's like, she's like, you can't tell Alma about this because she doesn't remember. He's like, I don't know if I can lie to Alma. Really? You're going to not lie to, like, the whole thing about how you two actually broke up, but you haven't told her about it? He's like, I can't lie to Alma about another thing. I love that he had to add that stipulation and everything. I even love it later when he's blabbing about all of this. He's like, it was Becca that told you, didn't you? I mean, she was blackmailing with this whole situation. I just thought that was kind of interesting. But what I thought was so fascinating was like when she used her power, she ended up kind of like looking at Sam's past and ended up kind of understanding that he was kind of in his own way, kind of similar to her, like someone trying to find their own way. Because obviously, like at the time, like he was dealing with the fact that, you know, he's a kid from a different country. He came here, got picked on, to the point he would listen to a book on recordings and play it over and over again to the point so he could get rid of his accent. I was like, oh, that's so sad. And obviously at the same time, you have like Alma dealing with a similar thing, because for her, like her whole hearing aid situation, learning to hear and kind of like talk, you know, because before she'd always just used sign language. And I thought that was such a fascinating story, because obviously that led to like some contention between, you know, Camilla and Jacob. What's the whole situation? Because like Jacob's the only one that could fully communicate with her, because he would use, because he knows sign language, but it wasn't something that I think Camilla was well versed in. For her, she wants to be able to have a conversation with her daughter, be able to teach her daughter Spanish. It's like, he's like, well, why don't you learn sign language? She's like, well, why don't you learn Spanish? You know, so that was kind of a thing in itself, because it turns out Camilla was the one that was kind of pushing more for the surgery, whereas like, you know, Jacob was trying to be like, I'm trying to tell her all her options, let her know that everything's okay. Like if she wants to just stay deaf, she can. She can just use the hearing aid to kind of help, but she doesn't have to go to this extreme of getting this particular surgery to kind of be able to hear that it's okay for her. Because it's also sad too, because she ended up leaving a school where all her friends were and everything. So, and it just almost seemed like her mom didn't seem like, from what the little bit we saw, it almost seemed like Camilla didn't, like, it just kind of like, no, okay, you saying goodbye to your friends, come on, we gotta pick up his gesture, and I get that, but at the same time, it seemed a little wrong, because it almost seemed like you weren't doing it for her sake, you were doing it for your own sake, because of what you wanted, but at the same time, it's like, who am I to say anything? You're a mother who wants to connect even more with your daughter, because for you probably feel like your daughter has more of a relationship with her father than she does you, because they're able to actually communicate. Like, the only way you can communicate with her is if she reads your lips, but to be able to talk to her, to teach her, your culture, your language, you want to pass that on to your children, you want to be able to connect. And that's a big part of this show too, is connections. And I think that's just, I don't know, it's a beautiful element with the whole situation, but regardless, I was actually surprised that she ended up accepting Sam, being like, it's okay, I love you, it's okay, I'm sorry. And he's like, wait, what happened? And her dad being like, don't tell him. And I was like, are you actually going to tell him? I thought she was going to tell him and then rewind time and make it so it didn't happen, but she ends up telling him and sticking with it, to the point even he actually sticks around and helps her figure out this whole thing with her dad. I'm like, he's helping you investigate too? Like, you could tell he was kind of reluctant. Easily one of my favorite exchanges in this was the whole him and Nancy situation of being like, I can't remember everything about it, but it's like, oh, I know you might not like your job. She's like, actually, I like my job. He's like, I know you don't like all these kids. Actually, the kids are pretty okay. And he was going on and basically being like, I know you feel like you're not respected. She's like, no, I feel respected. And she's like, I, am thankful for every opportunity I have. He's like, well, thank you, Nancy. And just kind of like, and almost like, really? That's all you had? And just, he doesn't say anything. I also love that cute exchange they had before. He's like, let me do all the talking. Because, well, I'm good with small talk. Everyone likes me and all that. And she's like, the fact of the matter is, I'm charming. A lot of people think I'm charming. And he's like, who? And she's like, fine, I'll leave you up to the small talk, and I'll do what's very important. That's making meaningful connections with people and helping them out, like I always do. Excuse me, and Keats Wall. I just thought, just like I said, the humor in this is so interesting, because I wasn't expecting there to be a humorous side, like these little comedic moments between some of the characters. Like, what was one of my favorites was like the whole thing with Jacob, where she's like, yeah, you're a science professor. He's like, oh God, what was it? It was like some specific science, and she's like, yeah, like I said, science. He's like, considering that science, it's like calling John Lennon a singer. And she's like, well, he did sing. And then Jacob just kind of was like, let's go. I love that. I also love the whole thing of like, oh, the attic. I haven't been up here in so long. I remember coming here getting high scores on my tests and coming up here to study a lot. Her dad's looking at, all right, I know you're bullshitting me, but we'll let that slide. I also like the explanation of the whole thing too, of like, what was it that basically, because of the accident, that basically her mind's conception of like time, that basically she doesn't look at time in a very non-linear, she looks at time in a very non-linear fashion now, just because her understanding of time and space had kind of got knocked loose because of the accident, or all of this is a fever dream because of, your head trauma and all that. So, so just kind of giving that big option of like, it's this or it's this. I don't know, I just really like that. There's also some other interesting elements. I should throw it out there, like the whole Father Miguel and Camilla thing. I thought that was going to be a thing. Like, I thought like companionship type of thing, but it never turned into that. I guess it's like he was, obviously him being, someone from the church or whatever, he felt like an ally that she had. It was actually kind of a sad thing that Becca says, like, actually, I'm going to go to church with Reed and his family. The thing is, Mom, outside of me and Alma, you kind of don't really have much of anything, so I'm afraid to kind of go off and have a second family and leave you kind of by yourself. But like, I think she felt like she had Miguel to rely on. Then there's a whole conversation about the pill situation. Like, I knew she found something, because like, oh, she just drinks the tea and she just kind of bounces, even though she made such a point to come over there. And it's like, oh, that's why. And I thought what's kind of interesting is that when she brings this up to the father, it's like, oh yeah, like you snuck in, grabbed my prescription. The psychiatrist said I had PTSD and I didn't have to take the medication if I didn't want to. Which even the father was like, yeah, yeah, if she doesn't want to, and then almost Camilla being like, what the hell are you talking about, father? She needs to take this damn medication. In the sense that, like, wait, is it kind of almost being like, wait, is it true that you just went in there and kind of fill the medication for her, and it's kind of almost forcing her to take it? And it's like, because even almost kind of like, oh wow, you're on my side, father. But I thought it was kind of interesting, and I can understand the sentiment that he has of like, you can't force people to help people when they don't want it, because basically almost like you'll do more harm than good. Like all you do is make those people kind of resent you and push you away. Like Alma, rather than coming to you, will most likely push you away. But then that pissed Camilla off, because I think it is a thing of, because so much went wrong in life. Like I said, each one of them is kind of broken in their own way, and I believe is trying to, because in Camilla's case, she's trying to keep their family together, but after having such a big loss, it's hard, because it's not just taking a toll on the kids, it's taking its toll on her. So that's why obviously she's being the very overprotective parent, because in her mind it's like, oh, my daughter's going insane. She knows that this stems from Jacob's side of the family. His mom had schizophrenia. We eventually find out later on potentially he did. So, schizophrenia is a genetic thing. So she's worried, and you can understand why. So it's not like it comes from a bad place. It comes from being a loving and caring mother, So like you can, from the side of being a kid, I can understand that whole thing of kind of like, oh, your parents try to do the right thing, and you're in that position where you always notice their flaws and their mistakes, especially when you're older. But as someone who isn't a parent, you can never put yourself 100% in their shoes to really understand what they're going through. It's kind of, my thought process. That's how I kind of like try to empathize with the whole situation. But nevertheless, it's actually kind of interesting. I'm surprised that Alma never used what she learned about Sam to kind of convince him that she knows that this whole time travel thing isn't just in her head. Seeing her dead dad isn't just in her head, because she was able to do it, the whole Nancy thing, and he's like, whoa, did you do that just because of a screensaver? And he was like, because she looks and sees the whole thing about Nancy and her sister, and it's like, oh, I didn't even see that screensaver. It's like, no, I've actually experienced her entire life. And that was a beautiful moment of them connecting like that, because for her it's like, I get it, you're like me, that there's that wanting, just answers, looking at someone's head from behind it and thinking it's the person that you've lost, that you're thinking on some level maybe they're still out there somewhere just waiting for me to find them. And I was like, there was like this sad beauty to that, that sentiment of just, there's a beauty to that, in it, like I said, in a very sad way. I don't know how to like properly put into words what I'm trying to say in that regard. I also love the speech that Alma gave. She talks about her sister, and it was a very beautiful, heartwarming thing. And she's like, I'm done. And then say, oh crap, I didn't say anything about Reed. This. And it's like, yo, like Reed's such a bro that he's kind of like, yo, thanks for having my back by saying all those cool things about me, kind of ignoring the fact is that she literally didn't even think about you until the last second, and then she just threw out some stuff, but he was totally okay with it just because that's who Reed is. So I love that whole situation. I thought it was kind of interesting too, because I was actually kind of worried for Alma when she kind of blew up at, Becca and brought up the whole like, oh, you fucked a bartender thing in front of not just only Reed and their mother, but literally all the families and everyone in this whole like wedding situation. But luckily she was able to rewind it and bring it back. I was like, oh wow. And part of me was actually worried, because she was like, oh, maybe it seems like it's stuck this time. But when he later on says, oh, this is all temporary, I was like, oh, is this all going to snap back at some point? He meant temporary as like, oh, this reality is not going to stay the same once you fix the past, and then I come back, it'll be like I was here the entire time, so everything is okay. It's actually kind of sad too, because the reason why he pushed her so much, he even says it later on, is because he wanted to be here for Becca's wedding, and that's why he's been pushing so hard. But for him, it's like, I love you, I'm so proud of you, all the time that we spent together. The fact of the matter is, this is a special night, this wedding, this is your family, and this is something y'all can share together. So like, this should be something that, yes, we can get me back, but this moment you have right now with your family before reality shifts and everything, you should take it and enjoy it. And he kind of gave her that moment to kind of enjoy it with everyone. I thought that was just kind of a neat element to the whole thing. But it is kind of interesting. I love the whole conversation too, where Becca was like, yeah, you might not remember this, but I slept with the bartender, and like Elma has to pretend like she didn't remember. She's like, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, I did it last week too. And she's like, no shit, really? Even I was like, holy crap. Oh, wow. I guess, and it's sad too because Rebecca, it's the whole thing of like for her, anytime she gets in a long term relationship, she kind of freaks out because I think it becomes a little too real. So she's like, I don't know. She kind of has to mess it up, and in her mind, she's thinking that's what she's doing now. She didn't want to tell. She wanted to tell Reed the truth, and Alma is like, maybe you should wait till after the wedding. You know, last thing you want to do is just kind of throw this on him, literally the wedding day. So, but it's like if he really loves you, the fact of the matter is that you know, you'll go to counseling after this or whatever, but you'll figure it out kind of after the fact, but just kind of have today, you know? So I thought that was kind of neat. To a certain extent, that's kind of an element too, because that's something Sam had brought up earlier in the season, because obviously Alma was like, I'm not in the whole aspect of having kids and weddings and all that. It's just not me. And he's like, we have for now. Like, I don't know what the future holds for us, but at least we have now, and let's just kind of live in that now. So I just thought that was kind of a neat aspect, and that kind of applies to a certain extent in certain other regards. I haven't talked about it, but I also like that aspect of kind of like grounding herself into this world, in this reality, by doing electronic blackjack. I love that being a thing. It was something her dad kind of focused on and everything too, and it's meant to keep her kind of based in reality. Even at that point when she kind of accidentally transported to the time of the accident, she kind of rips open her chest and pulls out the blackjack and starts doing it, and then she ends up back in reality. I was like, oh, that's such a neat little thing. And even to the point later on, she eventually learned how to control it, because I love the whole thought that obviously it's kind of affected by her emotions, both bad and good. Like obviously, like, because through her flows like the feelings of not just her but her entire like lineage, because feelings from her dad, feelings from her grandmother on her dad's side, and even like the good memories and stuff like that, you kind of have to let it go. The whole thing of like, you know, try without trying, be like the sky and stuff like that. I just thought that was kind of like a beautiful thing. I even love like how, like, you know, like slowly but surely it's like, okay, move the keys with your mind by making it so that they move, because you go to a different point in time where they're not there, and then go to another point in time when they are there, you know? So I'm surprised things never got too 100% hectic. It comes at points where it's like time starts overlapping itself too much. I mean, she kind of like rewind, fast forward, kind of like you're rewinding a TV show or something like that. She kind of like stuff starts blending together. It's even that trippy thing of like when she kind of like there's a second version of herself kind of leaning out of her back, where she kind of like fiddling with time and trying. It's basically, and I like the way he refers to it as a whole thing of like, you know, it's like, okay, here's all these blocks. These blocks are everything that people know. And here's Mr. Construction Worker. Actually, we like to think of her as a lesbian mom. And he just pauses. Okay, so like this lesbian mom is walking, and then it's this whole explanation of like, she's down here. This, what she's in around her is the world that she knows as she sees it as, but we are up here. Except for you kind of have a foot in both realms. You kind of have a foot up here, kind of seeing everything from a different perspective outside of time and got a different view of time and space, but at the same time you're obviously grounded to also this reality, so you see things from a normal perspective too. It's actually interesting because there's this whole thing about shamans and stuff like that. They're basically saying that, you know, what might be labeled as schizophrenia, and that's something I've heard people say before. I'm not saying that there's 100% validity to it, but I always thought it was kind of an interesting thought process that even someone who might have schizophrenia, you know, and you can make the argument maybe this is feeding into someone's schizophrenia, but the thought process is that maybe there is something there, that their mind is tapped into something that we're not seeing. That basically, you know, especially if you want to like to think that like reality is a simulation, which, you know, a theory is that maybe someone who has schizophrenia is kind of, their brain's working on a different wavelength, and that maybe they're seeing something that we can't quite process because our brain isn't there. Like I said, it's just a thought process, you know. Not trying to say that's how things are, but, you know, that's how Jacob's research, him and Farnaz whole situation was. Which even I was immediately jumping to the conclusion, like, especially because we find out later on that she died in an accident, and he kind of didn't let that detail come up first. I'm like, you had an affair, didn't you? But he kind of made a point to be like, no, I didn't have an affair. And so I was like, oh, is there truth to that? I even love, like, oh yeah, like, what was her boyfriend's name? Gerald, Harold, Daryl? And she starts laughing. You think his name was Daryl? She's like, I don't know. I always called him Skinny Arms, you know? It was actually kind of interesting too, because I thought, and I think this show does a good job of kind of subverting your expectations. It's kind of something I was going to, bring up earlier, but I can kind of tie it all in here. It's the whole aspect of, like I said, like the Legion thing. Do you know? It's hard to say whether or not she is crazy or not, Because part of me was like, okay, because I was wondering, it's like, is that going to be ended up being the thing? But I'm like, no, the more this time travel thing went about, I'm like, nah, it's a legit time travel. But then other things made you go, nah, maybe it all is in her head. I don't know. Because the reason why I'm bringing that up is the whole situation. But the fact is, even if that was the case, how would she know the exact details that she knew? Like, for stuff about Nancy like that, the fact of the matter is things aren't the way they are. Because certain things make it seem like there are time travel elements to it. Because the fact is, she spilled the beans about Reed, but then like, oh, she was able to rewind time. But then at the same time, you can be like, well, that's her illness making her think that she did. She perceived something happening when it didn't. Because I'm not that well versed into like all the aspects of schizophrenia. Like, obviously they run through a little of the symptoms and stuff like that, but maybe it could be kind of like a little bit of a disassociation with time and events. So like, you think this happened because like obviously something happens in your head, you're like, oh, this happened. Like, so maybe she went there in her head and told Reed and them everything about like, oh, Becca sleeping with Tomas, but then like come back and it's just like, oh no, in actuality she took that because she thought she did time travel, but it's like, oh, I'm here, let me fix those mistakes, so because it's interesting, because it's not like she time traveled all the time. You would think being able to time travel, you use it more often to fix your problems, like especially when conversations and things don't necessarily go your way. But a lot of times she just let things kind of stick the way they were, unless things got super bad, like the whole Becca blowout at the end there. You get what I'm trying to say? So it's just kind of interesting. But the point I was making is because the whole fact is that there's almost like this conspiracy. She's tracking down that Charlie dude. But it is kind of interesting. Little details got a little bit wrong and stuff like that. For example, the reason why she couldn't find Charlie is because his name was a little different. It was a little off. And even at one point, you can tell Sam was kind of a little reluctant because it was like, oh crap. This... Was it Daryl? No, it was Charlie, I think. He was like, crap, he's a real dude. Because he started worrying about the fact is that he might be playing into this delusion that's going through Alma's mind. But stuff like that, like I said, it's starting off to seem like, oh, it might be a conspiracy. But then she confronts Charlie, and Charlie's like, actually, no, that research was going nowhere. So, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, so he wasn't, or was he lying? But even, Jacob was like, nah, you can't trust anyone. All you can do is trust yourself. So it's like, okay, what's up with this? But I love the whole aspect of like the whole dance, that being a connection between people and stuff like that. And she dances over the course, like, at the wedding and then the next couple of days. And she ends up, it kind of makes me think of like really quickly that dream when she pops in naked. I was like, oh, did she actually legitimately show up naked? And she's in front of the kids and Tunde's like, what the hell? I'm like, oh man, I was like, oh man, like, are you gonna have to rewind this? But it's like, oh no, it was all in a dream. And I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of almost this Inception level thing of like, because it's a dream, it's a little easier to kind of warp things, but like it's supposed to be kind of a training ground, because eventually she'll get to the point where it doesn't matter what reality she's in, whether it be dreams or awake in reality, that she's able to kind of, shift things. And that's kind of like the whole point. But regardless, it's like, okay, it's like they go back to that night and everything, so they follow him back to the lab and everything. Even to the point, I love, like, almost like, because Jacob's like, how did you bring me back here? She's like, I summoned my ancestral spirits, and, no big deal. And he's like, okay, sure. But they go back to the lab. Who's there? It's Camilla, and I'm like, oh, whoa, what's this going to turn into? It's like, was Camilla the killer the entire time? I was like, that's interesting. But it's like, no, Camilla's pissed because she finds out that, Jacob has been experimenting on Alma, which is like, oh, he made a point to be like, oh, he wasn't experimenting on her, but he was. Because I didn't even talk about it, but it's also like, obviously the whole shaman's brain structure and everything. It was like, what was that part of the brain? There's a part of the brain that's like filled with like fluids and stuff like that. And I even love like Alma making a dirty joke of it, of like, yeah, like, who doesn't like big, like thick fluid or something, like a thick sack of fluid or some shit like that. She said something like that, kind of making like a sexual pun. And her dad just completely kind of moves past it. I just thought that was kind of interesting. But The whole thing is like, we know that he looked at her like that. It was actually kind of interesting on his explanation of being like, well, the reason why I did that is because if it came true to be you, like you, he's like, I was hoping to go back in time to my mom and help her realize that she wasn't crazy, that she had these powers that she just wasn't aware of. And the fact of the matter is, she wouldn't have been kind of, so tightly locked up for almost her entire life because people thought she was crazy, And I thought that was actually kind of a sad reason, but I think that was something that, Alma could get behind, like his understanding of, like, this little boy who had to watch his mom go through such terrible stuff, longing to kind of help her. In the end, it's kind of like a big reason for all of this too, I thought that was kind of interesting. But obviously Camilla wasn't too happy because obviously she thinks there's an affair going on, and it's this whole thing, for her, it's just, she's kind of like, the fact is, and it speaks volumes, you literally left our daughter somewhere in the neighborhood trick-or-treating. Like, you just left her alone being like, oh, stay here, I'm gonna check on the lab, showing that yes, his work in the lab is more important, but it is a thing of like I said, he gave his explanation. I mean, it's sweet and everything, but at the same time, you're still like, it's still super irresponsible to do what you did, just because the fact is, it shows like your lab is more important to her. The fact is, you just left her somewhere. Why not just bring her to the lab with you? But the argument could be like, oh, maybe someone was smashing up the place, but you would assume like Farnas would have told him that it was your wife, and so I don't know. Regardless, Camilla was kind of ending things then and there, kind of taking the kids away, and even Farnas was like being like, yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with your wife, experimenting on a child because you're supposed to get both parents' permission. So maybe it wasn't even necessarily just his kid, maybe someone else's kid, and just all that they've done. She wasn't kind of okay with it ethically anymore, but he's like, no, it's okay. We'll figure this out. I'll take you home. And then I was like, okay, so where the hell is it? The moment he was like, I'm going to take you home, I'm like, oh, is this what I think it is? Turns out he's the one that killed them. It wasn't, like I said, there was no grand conspiracy. They weren't murdered. He killed them because he couldn't remember, because even at one point he tries to like vanish from this time, but she uses her powers to kind of force him to stay. He's like, no, you have to stay. And so, because for him, he can't remember anything because he thought, because he could never get to this point because the trauma, he thought, always kind of pushed him away. But I think it's more maybe a combination of the trauma, but also the shame kind of, the shame that he might have felt. It kind of blocked his memory, even to the point he tried to get Alma to go back in time. He like forces her hand and takes her back to the day of the car accident, of her particular car accident, that kind of set all this in motion that let her unlock her abilities and everything. He was trying to make it so that she could go back to normal because he was afraid of her kind of fully learning the truth, which the truth is all she wanted. She wanted answers. And so when it was all said and done, finding out like your dad was behind this, but for her, it's like she understands because she made mistakes and she realizes her dad there is not the same person that's there. And so she's not, for one, it's like, you're my dad, I'm never going to give up on you, but look at who you are now. You're a better person. Obviously, you don't co-sign your actions then. So can't you like possess his body and kind of change things, which they do. He possesses his body earlier in the night before he left Alma, and it's like, hey, things have potentially changed. She gets back to reality, her reality, and she thinks, oh, everything's going to change. Obviously, everyone's turning against her. Sam turned against her. It's like, your mom, we're all scared for you. We think you're mentally unstable. Obviously, her friend at work, Tundi, kind of feels the same way. Once again, I feel like that would have been the moment to stick it in Sam's face to be like, oh yeah, Sam, this about your child. Or, oh, the fact is, plain as cassette so you can learn English. Wait, what? How do you know that? It never came up. But that's why I'm kind of surprised. But nevertheless, her mom wanting her to take medication. Then we get the reveal. It's like, your dad, a year before he died, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So now it makes sense of like, okay, so why she was going the way she was, because it's not like he was, I mean, even if he was being rational, you experimenting on your husband experimenting on your child wouldn't sit right with you. But even more so, it's not going to sit right with you knowing that he's unstable too. So that's a whole thing. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing of like, okay, so how much, but it's a whole thing because, even, Sam made a point of like, yeah, what about Back to the Future? When you do the whole time travel thing, when you come back, the new timeline's kind of already set in. But then, you have like Alma being like, well, maybe things don't kind of work like that it does take time. I mean, it depends, because some continuity makes it seem like an immediate thing of like, yeah, things have changed, they change. But other things make it so that the moment you snap back into the present time or whatever time you came from, I mean, that depends, because obviously Endgame is a great example of like time travel not being your typical time travel rules, but usually it's other things kind of depicted as things can change instantly, but other things kind of make it seem like time it takes a while before time completely sets in. Like DC's Legends of Tomorrow kind of has more so like things kind of change, but it usually is kind of a while before things kind of fully submit into place of being kind of a permanent, unmovable thing. You get what I'm trying to say? So, but, she's not listening to her mom. But like I said, her mom is just worried because for her, it's like, like I said, it's just a mother's duty of just like, she's like, I'm scared. It might seem like I'm pushing you into all of this, but I'm just scared for you that you're going to go through the same thing your father did. You're literally talking like he is. And I just don't want to lose you. She drives to Mexico. Her sister got sent there by their mom to come check on her. Apparently, she told Reed everything. Didn't end well because the marriage is going to be annulled, and they basically have to give back all the gifts. So that's interesting. And they're there waiting at the cave, and it's like, oh, when we wake up, time will kind of set in. This reality won't matter anyway. And Becca's not arguing. She's like, if that's the case, it will be nice, But they wake up and everything's okay, so not okay. So now it's the whole thing of like, is it all in her head? Because for her, it's that thing of like, can this really just be it? Because if it is all in my head, that would mean that this is all there is. Shouldn't there be more to this life? And so she wants to wait to see like, hey, is dad going to come through or not? Just give me a few minutes to see whether or not. And like Becca gives her the space and time. It's like, but no matter what the case may be, the fact of the matter is me, I'm going to be there for you. Mom is going to be there for you, So, and then we see like the sun rising. Her face is shocked, like, okay, what are you about to see? Oh, because I'm on pins and needles being like, is it going to be like a last second reveal, like, hey, you're not crazy? Or is it going to be a thing of like, yes, you are crazy? I was like, that's why I'm like I brought it up earlier. I wasn't sure whether really labeled as a Super-Fanta-Fi or not, like if it ends up all being in her head. And then all of a sudden we get to the end and hard cut the credits. I'm like, what? That's the big, what? Cliffhanger much? I didn't expect it to have like a cliffhanger, like, cause I wasn't sure like whether. I'm assuming this is something that could be like multiple seasons and stuff like that, but I'm like, oh my god, you literally didn't tell us whether or not this is all in her head or whether she is time travel. Like I said, I like to think she knows too much for it to just be a time travel thing, but maybe she's just very good at, picking up on certain things. Like I said, you can't deny that Nancy thing, and there's just so many consistent, like, things within the show that make you go, you think the time travel was real, but like I said, there are other things that can make you go, like I said, the whole, there are things that can make you go, there could be a quote unquote rational explanation for that. So I don't know. It's so interesting, a way to end off the season. At the time of me recording this, it's Saturday. The new season dropped, or this show dropped yesterday. So whether or not it's getting renewed, it doesn't seem like any reports or anything are up yet. I am hopeful because this show is so, like I said, it's the blend of everything. Because I just looked it up. I forgot. Like, this is connected, like, to people who are connected to BoJack Horseman. I have to look more into it. But I think it was, like, I don't know if it's necessarily, like, the creators. But people who are connected to BoJack Horseman are connected to this show. I think maybe, like, the writers and stuff like that. Maybe, I think that, like, two people I was seeing their names pop up at the credits were both the writers and the creators of it. So I think the creators of BoJack Horseman made this, which is interesting too, which I guess also makes sense why there's kind of like the humorous side to it, which I haven't watched a lot of BoJack Horseman, but I know it's like a very like dark comedy show, so regardless, I'd love to see what they do with season 2, especially because, like I said, they ended on such a cliffhanger like that. I wasn't even paying attention to the time. I was like, oh, what's it gonna, and then it literally has the like light shining, seeming like, oh, maybe there is something to it, and hard cut. Because I was wondering, because part of me was wondering, like, was this whole thing going to get resolved? And then I was thinking, like, oh, is this going to end up being like a anthology thing where it's like each season is a new story set of characters? But it's like, no, I think we're going to be following the same characters because there's still a lot. I feel like there's still more story to tell to figure out whether or not this is all in her head. Like I said, it's the whole David situation from Legion. Just because you have powers that make everyone think you're crazy doesn't mean that just because you have those powers don't mean that you aren't still also crazy on top of it, So that's going to be interesting to see, how Alma applies that. Is it going to be a situation where like all reality gets rewritten? Which that could be a good thing. That could be the story of a next season of like, in that moment, reality got rewritten. We kind of slowly started off be like, okay, make it seem like wait, something's up here, like, oh, maybe she is just all in her head, but then it's like, oh no, we think that this whole thing is like her continuing after learning the fact that this is all in her head, but when in actuality the entire realities be rewritten, and maybe it's a thing of like things actually turn out worse this way. You still get your dad, but you might have that whole time travel thing of like, oh, kind of a little bit of a flash thing of like, let me fix it. Let me fix it. And then, like, time and space starts unraveling and it causes more and more issues and the ripple effects, which I think is something we haven't even dabbled in yet. Like the ramification of making certain choices. Like I said, she's dabbled in changing time a little bit. Like I said, it hasn't gone full blown, but that could be something they take in the next season of like her really unraveling time because she's trying to fix stuff because things like have ripple effects. I mean, it might even be that thing of like, yeah, your dad didn't die because of this, but then some other event happens that it's almost kind of like, is it fate? Is it destiny? Is a life meant to be this way? And maybe that's something she's going to have to learn, that like there's just certain things you can't change, that certain things are just kind of unmovable. And even if you move things, it might be a final destination type of thing of like, yeah, you changed this, you moved him away from this path so something else. Like I said, you don't know like the ripple effects from like changing time and stuff like that. So I think that'd be kind of an interesting element to take with all of this. Like, especially I'm curious where she would go, because if things didn't necessarily change, it's like, well, how do you live in a reality where you can't really trust anyone? I mean, more so yourself. It's like, well, where do you and Sam stand? Because like obviously Sam's got your best intentions, but in your mind you're like, oh, I can't trust him. Obviously things are complicated with your mom too, but obviously she has your best interest at heart, just like your sister. So I'd love to see what they do with season 2. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time with me, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good